My name is James Tucker. I'm the director of ADAP. That's the Alabama Disabilities Advocacy Program. I know that you've heard, but it's important. The 3 DD network partners in the state are doing partners together. We support each other. ADAP, folks from UAB, Linda Russo, and then Daryl at the DD Council. We're all in this together. When partners existed in Alabama in years past, that's not how it was done. And we really wanted to pull together to do this work with you guys in year 2. You're generally familiar with ADAP. We are the protection and advocacy agency for people with disabilities in the state of Alabama, meaning nonprofit legal services to people with disabilities. Eligibility is based on disability, not income. So I've had as a client the daughter of the richest surgeon at UAB, but most of our clients do not have resources, way more than 90%. So that's a little bit about ADAP. I want to say a word about me. Maria asked me the question, so James, why are you a lawyer? And I just want to share a little bit. I know that each of you has shared your story. I'll share my story a little bit and you'll get a sense of why I do what I do, why I keep doing it, and why I choose to keep doing it. So by 1965, my family had lived in North Carolina, California, North Carolina, Tuscaloosa, Chattanooga, and Decatur, Alabama. So I didn't go to kindergarten. I went to 1st grade. I grew up in Decatur. By the time I was in 4th grade, I wanted to be a lawyer. I read a biography of Clarence Darrow, and I wanted to be a lawyer. Before I left high school, I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. And this is where it gets serious. Why did I want to be a civil rights lawyer? For traditional reasons in the state of Alabama. Every day, I saw things that embarrassed me where I grew up in Decatur in the 60s and the 70s. Completely embarrassed me, including in my house where I grew up. So I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer before I left high school. Please join. Hey, Linda. I promise we're going to wrap this up by 8:30. And I'm answering the question, why is James Tucker a lawyer? But the best way that I can really summarize this is the following. When I came home from college at the end of either my freshman or sophomore year, there was a huge fight about civil rights going on in my hometown. The SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, was marching in downtown Decatur, Alabama, in support of a person, a Black man who had been accused of a crime. His name is Tommy Lee Hines. Tommy Lee Hines was a person with an intellectual disability. When I came home, my brother said, hey, James Arnold, double name, good Southern double name. You want to go out to the fairgrounds tonight? The Klan's marching. I said, no, but that's like 1980 in the state of Alabama. The next day, when the SCLC marched down one of the main streets in downtown Decatur, Alabama, the Klan shot into the march in broad daylight. I knew marchers and I knew shooters. And I was sick. So that completely cemented my desire to fight everything that I had seen, everything that was wrong about our state. Our state is still getting way too many things wrong, badly wrong. I was an undergrad at the University of Alabama. I got my degree. I went to law school at Emory in Atlanta. When I was in Atlanta, I worked for a guy who was co-counseling a case with the Southern Poverty Law Center against the Klan regarding the shooting that they had done in Decatur. Yes, full circle. My job as a law student was to go over to the courthouse in Atlanta. This is before the days of fancy film and electronic reporting. Was to go over to the trial and take notes all day, every day on everything that was being said in that courtroom so that we could sue the Klan. So my confession, if you will, is I was absolutely committed to civil rights for a lot of different reasons. I'll share one more reason. When I was a teenager, and I know that there are people of faith in here, so I'm not gonna preach, but when I was a teenager, I read the Bible straight through 3 times. When I went to college, I had started a 4th time, but I was in college and I didn't finish it the 4th time. And I will tell you that what I read did not match what I heard being preached from the pulpit. So I have very strong views about the call to justice as a theological mandate on the lives of believers, and marry that with the things that I experienced growing up, what I observed, what I experienced in a number of ways, and I won't get into all the ugliness, but marry that. And then there's one more piece. I'm a little taller and a little bigger than I was a long time ago. So I'm not going to pretend that my experience compares with the experience of anybody in this room, but I was small enough in high school that despite the fact that for 4 years in a row, I was elected most likely to succeed. Thank you very much. Despite that, this little kid got stuffed in a locker, literally stuffed in a locker. That's pretty degrading. You know, these days you might call it restraint, seclusion. That was by my friends. No fun. But again, I won't pretend that any of that compares with the challenges of the lives of the people that we love, that we care for, that we support, and our own self-advocacy. So Maria, I wanted to try to answer your question. So I consider myself incredibly fortunate. Since the day that I graduated from law school in 1986, I have done nothing as a lawyer except public interest, civil rights work every day. I did it for 6 years in Florida, and I've now been at it for 31 years in Alabama. ADAP has multiple class actions going on right now against the state of Alabama. And we will be filing more because we're going to keep doing it. It doesn't seem that the state's leaders and decision makers can figure out how to get it right. And we're fighting that fight every day with you, on your behalf, side by side, in every way that we know how. So I wanted to try to take a moment to answer the question. Let me also say, I mean, I did a little bit of an introduction. We started it a little bit this afternoon when we were downtown. Incredibly generous of Jenny Shaver to come over and share her time. Really, really generous. Thank you, Linda, for arranging that. You know, she walked out of the room and you guys had lots of questions. I was trying to answer some of them. I would much rather us have a discussion and you ask any question that you've got at any point tonight or tomorrow. together with my colleague Nancy Anderson. I think we probably will be trying to pull things together and wrap it up at the end of the day tomorrow. So hopefully, you know, by now I am up for your questions. We're better when we support each other, when we're all working together, and that's hard with a lot of different people in a lot of different groups. It's really hard, but we just have to keep doing. Linda, I want to pause for a minute and just ask you a question. You just went to Washington, D.C. to Judy Heumann's funeral, and I wanted to ask I think that we should pause and appreciate the life of Judy. Would you be willing to say a few words about that tonight, or would you prefer to hold that for some time tomorrow?
Hi, this is Linda. Yeah, so I'll say a few words tonight. I don't want to carry it over tomorrow. Thank you, James.
Hey, I warned you.
I forgot. So I hope everybody has heard the last few days about Judy Heumann. I hope you about her a little bit before that. We watched Crip Camp early on here, so we got a little bit introduction to her. So I went to her funeral. I didn't go so much as for myself. I went for my daughter who knew her. She's a young self-advocate, and she was in DC for a couple of years. She did an internship while she was in law school, met Judy there, and Judy was just an influential person. And what they brought out with her at her funeral was the moment she woke up to the minute she went to sleep, she was always calling, texting, including everybody. If she met you or if she just saw you on the street and she thought she might need to know you, she would just go over and you would become her friend. She would call a lot of people her sister. And she was just inclusive. She would have a dinner party and now you would never know who exactly was going to show up. And that's why I love the partners too. It's like, we don't know each other when we go in, but at the end, we're lifelong friends. So that was so great. And my daughter wanted to go, and she had friends flying in from all over the country. And I was like, we'll make the effort to go. So yeah, we drove up. We started driving Monday, drove some Tuesday. We drove home all last night. But she got to connect with her friends. One of them was a pallbearer. They went out to eat. They just had a great time. And you know how it is with funerals. You know, it's the people that are left behind, and you share and you do. And the legacy that Judy left was amazing, and all the people that were gathered, and the service was great. They had a lot of different people speak. They had friends and family members in her synagogue, everybody in there. But then they went to the burial, and then there was a reception at about 2 p.m. And they had the reception in the synagogue, and I don't know if you all have faith-based places where you go to the funeral, you go to the burial, and then you come back to the church, you have food there and everybody kind of gathers around. Well, the family was like her brothers and her nieces, they were off a little bit here, and her husband was sitting at a table where we were sitting, but then the collective room was just people with disabilities, and they were all friends and they were all networking, and it was that energy that was there. It wasn't like your typical funeral where it's like you've got these grieving family members there. It was just so energizing to see how she brought people together and the movement that was going to continue on. So that was a little bit about what I experienced, and it was really great. And you all are similar to that. And especially this group is outgoing and sharing everything you have and the energy that you all have too. So thank you for that. Continue with that. But we honor Judy.
So if folks have been reading the news, I don't know if we've circulated an obituary regarding Judy or a reflection on her work and her life. If we haven't, we will do that. But I just think it's important in a movement and in work like this, we need to pause to honor the fathers and mothers who have gone before us. We need to reflect on the sisters and brothers that we work with. And we need to be able to appreciate that we stand on the shoulders of giants without whom we would not be here and without whose strength we do not have the ability to go forward. So it's really important when somebody like Judy passes that we pause and reflect and respect and remember and rededicate ourselves to the work that we are engaged in together, mutually, so that we can support each other. I am going to keep track of the clock, but thank you, Linda, for sharing. I want to do a couple more things tonight to kind of set the groundwork for tomorrow. I can say a few words about kind of the advertised subject of the evening. I'm calling it Bill Making 101, 102, but I will share with you that when Bill Fuller and I looked at the title, his email back to me was, all right, James, get them ready for 404, like senior or graduate work. And his subtitle was Into the Lion's Den. So Bill is going to be here tomorrow. I had to step out when Kim was talking about the Colby Act. So you've had a description from Alan Bergman about how a bill gets passed in the federal level. It's the same thing in the state of Alabama. I don't necessarily want to kind of focus at this late hour on the mechanics. What I will do is share a little bit more detail about some of the work that we've been doing on one piece, and that's the Colby Act. And I want to take it because a partners graduate from last year, from year one, Kim and Colby and I have been working on this together for at least 3 years now. And I want to try to give you a sense of how we got to where we are and how far we still have to go. So in 2021, think back about it. That's 1 year after COVID started. Things were still weird in the state legislature. And like, if you're not an inside person, and if you're not a registered lobbyist, you could barely even get in the building. Kim and Colby and I started talking, so back in 2021, and y'all heard mention, and we got some questions this afternoon about the Alabama Law Institute and Legislative Reference Service. What we were told in 2021 is that at the Alabama Law Institute has got this, where they're going to reform guardianship and conservatorship. And the subject of the Colby Act, supported decision-making, is in the bill. And I'm gonna use a Shakespearean term, forfend that we would want to offend anyone doing that, because that's not how the game is played inside the State House in Montgomery. So Kim and Colby and I are watching and monitoring during all of the regular session in 21. And I will confess, I think I made an error. I always want to be self-critical and confess when I screw up. We probably should have come with a bill in 21, but we didn't, because we were trying to be respectful and careful and make new friends, make new partners so that we could move our issue. We're not doing this because we want Colby's name. We're doing this to get a result. Well, so in 2021, I think I gave bad advice. So last year I said to Kim, well, let's try to figure this out on 2 tracks. Let's watch what ALI is doing, but if we get toward the end of the session and they're not moving, we have got to drop a bill. Because the way this works is you drop a bill in year 1 and it doesn't pass. And in year 2, maybe it gets out of committee, and maybe in year 3, it passes. I mean, that's kind of like the longstanding assumed conventional wisdom about how people who don't have money with which to lobby get anything done in Montgomery. And looking around the room, I think that's us. So credit due to Linda. Her family member, Representative Gil Isbell from Northeast Alabama, agreed to propose the Colby Act last year. We partnered with AARP, and AARP got their lobbyist to give Representative Isbell the bill so that the representative could go to all the people that Ms. Shaver was talking about and get the language fixed and get it proposed. That happened last year. That's all that happened. It got proposed. Well, unfortunately, Gil Isbell did not pull off getting reelected. That's another story. We won't go there. So I called Kim sometime last fall and I said, where do we stand? You know, we don't have Representative Isbell. What are we going to do? Do you have a sponsor? No. And I said, well, let's start brainstorming. So here's really the heart of the matter. You hear it all the time, but it is true. It is true. It is true. What's happening in the legislature in the next couple of months isn't happening because of what happens in the next couple of months. What's happening in the next couple of months happens because of what happened before. So in the couple of weeks right before Christmas, back in December, Kim and Colby and I went to see a member of the House, a woman named Cynthia Almond from Tuscaloosa. Cynthia met with us for more than an hour, one-on-one in her office. And at the end of that hour, she had some questions, but she said, I support you. And she said, have you gone to see Senator Orr? We said, no, we have not, but maybe we should. And so Representative Almond said, Senator Arthur Orr from Decatur runs the Republican Party, runs the Senate, runs the legislature, because keep in mind, under our current set of elected officials at the State House, there is a super majority of Republicans in both the Senate and the House. If you're not playing ball with the Republicans, you're not playing ball. Partisan politics aside, that's where we are in the state of Alabama in 2023. So, having been to see Representative Almond, Kim, Colby, and I drove to Decatur to see Senator Arthur Orr. He did not give us as much time as Cynthia gave us, but he had seen the video. We sent him the video before we sat down with him, and he had taken a look at that 5-minute long video. We met with Arthur for less than 30 minutes, but when we walked out, we had his support, which meant we had co-sponsors in the House and the Senate before Christmas. We got the Colby Act proposed this week, same bills tracking, they got dropped in the House and the Senate this week. And so in a period of 3 years, you can see how our advocacy together, Kim, Colby, and I together with many other partners, have gotten to a point where this bill has a real chance of passing this year. Trial lawyers could kill it. Probate judges could kill it. I mean, somebody could kill it. There's still a lot to be done, but we have support. And I think I noticed today that the Senate bill already has co-sponsors, some of whom are Democrats. So those are good things. I'm going to try to wrap this up with a couple of thoughts. Please. I'm used to running the mic, but
this is Emily Bernard. Since I always want to know strategy, what would the reasons be to kill this bill so that we kind of know what the pushback would be?
there are a couple of objections so far. Because there's fear of the trial lawyers, we've already taken out one sentence about liability so that the trial lawyers don't kill it. Kim Colby and I met with 3 probate judges, the Shelby County probate judge and the 2 probate judges in Birmingham last week on Friday, because we'd been told if you don't meet with the probate judges, they could kill it. So we met with them. We're trying to get their support. I'm saying that for the following reason. Probate judges could get nervous and think that we're going to make more work. In addition, the notion of supported decision-making is very different than the way that 99% of the business comes before probate judges. Routinely, the way this works in the state of Alabama, and it's why supported decision-making is so important. Routinely, what happens is any motion for any kind of substituted decision-making is a motion for full guardianship. What we're proposing would be different. Some people don't like change. I'm trying to think of other questions that we've gotten. I mean, I think so far we've dealt with most of the questions. We dealt with the trial lawyer's question. One other question that we got was, why do you need supported decision-making? Won't a power of attorney take care of it? Well, actually, a power of attorney is me giving you the right to make decisions for me. But that question has been asked, so we had to have an answer to that question. So that's like 3 issues that we've already dealt with. So even though in this room, you know, we're friends, colleagues, champions, supporters, we all think this makes sense. It's not the way it's been done in the state of Alabama for 150 years. One more piece, politically, this isn't like routinely thought about. Historically, probate judge was the most powerful position in every one of the 67 counties. Historically, the probate judge was also the chair of the county commission. So that's a lot of power. Probate judges are the ones who, up until the 1960s, committed wives to Bryce because their husband wanted them to go to Bryce. There's a lot of history here. And so we need to be prepared to deal with all of that. So yeah, there have been some questions, there have been some objections, and we're trying to deal with all of them. Bottom line, the best thing that we can do is keep seeking co-sponsors. Everybody, everywhere. If we could have one sponsor and 34 co-sponsors in the Senate and one sponsor and 104 co-sponsors in the House, then I think we'd have a chance of passing these bills. So that's kind of the work that's gone into this point. I see that we are at time. I want to make one pitch to you, or it's a request. I've handed out to most everybody. If you don't have one, make sure you get one. I have handed out a copy of an article that came out just this week, March 3rd. Some disabled people are paid below minimum wage. This bill would end that. This is a piece of federal legislation. What's it called? There's always a name. The Transformation to Competitive Integrated Employment Act. It's bipartisan. It's been proposed in Congress. The reason I'm sharing this with you in advance of tomorrow is because I'm not saying that we're going to be discussing employment from 9 o'clock until 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. But at the end of the day, thanks to Mr. Bimes, I asked him to send me about a month ago. And I printed the chat in the box on Zoom from, I think, the January session when employment was the subject. I've gone back, I've pulled out some really important things that you guys were discussing in the chat. What I want to do is to try to, I said, you're not getting 200 PowerPoints. What we're trying to do is think together about how we do this work. At about 3 o'clock tomorrow, what I want us to do is to come back to the subject of employment. There's so many reasons to think about where we are on employment. There's a lot of work to be done. And I want to share with you just procedurally a reason that I'm going to come back to it. Every one of you has a project. That's 16 or 20 projects. Every partner from last year had a project. That's 16 or 20 projects. More power to you. What I'd like to ask you to do, though, is think about this. What if we all were working on a project together also? One reason that partners exist today is because the commissioner of the State Department of Mental Health asked us to get this going again. That's a good thing. She and her Associate Commissioner, Kathy Sawyer, whom some of you may know, are strong supporters of this class and this effort. They want this group to grow and gain power. We don't have a lot of friends in the governor's cabinet. When we think we may have friends, we should work with them to do everything that we can. Employment is really important to everybody in state government right now. We could pick housing, we could pick transportation. Veronica and Kyle are going to talk tomorrow a little bit about housing. We were talking about transportation before we jumped in tonight. But for the purposes of this discussion, to kind of pull the day together tomorrow, I want to come back to employment. Take the 3-page article, read it over if you will, please, and then let's come back with some energy tomorrow morning.